Right, people, there's a lot of, with this whole COVID thing, there's a lot of questions. Uh, there's a lot of questions. People are wondering, prayers, worship, rituals, Hajj, Ramadan. So the COVID fiqh, pandemic fiqh, people, is coming down. So first of all, what we'll do is take a look at some different categories to do with ibadat, which is worship, and how somebody's asked, do you think you're a bit harsh with the Ahmadiyya? Right, come on, don't distract me. I'm trying to get on with this for now. And I'll come to that question. I'll come to that afterwards. Okay, so right, so COVID fiqh, pandemic fiqh, people. Starting off with worship, and we begin with ritual purification, wudu, ghusl, things like this. So if a person is ill during the pandemic, and or it could be another illness as well, but we're just saying since this is the most pertinent, this deen is one of these, people. As there are other options. If it's difficult for you, if you're feeling nauseous or you're feeling, not really up to it, and you've got to do wudu, you can just do tayammum. Okay, so you can just use a stone and you just simply, you wipe over your face, you touch the stone again, you wipe over like that, and that's it. Tayammum is done. Tayammum substitutes wudu and ghusl. Okay, and in the understanding that I take, it's you do not need to repeat that wudu or ghusl. It's done. It substitutes it perfectly, as Imam Malik said. One is not better than the other. So that's to do with purification. If if there's any hardships in purifying, then you can take this kind of dispensation of tayammum. Okay, so that's for people who maybe kind of like maybe they're not feeling well, they're kind of fevered up, nauseous, exhausted, and you don't need to be dying. I know in the Hanafi fiqh they kind of treat tayammum like borderline. You you're on a ventilator or something. The Malikis are much more relaxed. Okay, let's move on to prayer. Okay, so that's with purification. You've got that dispensation. Okay, then moving on to prayer, people, if you're not feeling well, or you're feeling nauseous, or there's some kind of, and sometimes even during the pandemic, because you're kind of locked up, it could cause people to kind of almost break down. But whatever the reason, if it's out of the ordinary, to create ease, first of all, you can combine your prayers if you need to. Okay, so you can combine Dhuhr and Asr, you can combine Maghrib and Isha. Okay, if you are ill, and you're not feeling very well, not only can you combine prayers, I feel you can shorten prayers. Okay, now these are, and the reason being that if you can shorten prayers for being a traveler, then in most of the verses it does seem to usually imply, although many scholars didn't seem to take it for the sick person, but the verses do seem to kind of, generally the verses of ease do seem to show that. And if you can do this for traveling, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ أَن تَقْصُرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ إِنْ خِفْتُمْ, if you were afraid. And the scholar said, you don't even need to be afraid. Allah says if you're afraid, you don't even need to be afraid. So if you can do it for traveling, then min babi awla, it is even more deserving that you do this here. Okay, that's if you want to, that is. I feel the option is there if you are actually ill. Okay, so that's in terms of, and think about it, that if fear in traveling person could plan his prayers around here, around there. You could have been told to do that. Nowadays, most people travel in luxury, yet they still, without any hesitation, shorten the prayers. So why not when you're actually ill? So that's my understanding in terms of the prayers. The other thing is that I feel it's actually compulsory to shut down the masjids during the pandemic. You should be following these guidelines, and people should not be kind of striving to go to the mosque to pray. However, here there is a ruling. Can you pray, for example, what about things like Jum'ah? Now, I would say, or even Salatul Jama'ah, praying in congregation. There is a question that first of all, you can miss Jum'ah and just do regular Salah, regular Dhuhr. But can you pray in congregation without being in a congregation? So, for example, if it was on a radio, or I know some communities have a kind of like a radio transmitter in the homes from that masjid. So let's say the imam in some masjids is attending the mosque and there's a caretaker there. They're just going to make sure the building's fine, nobody's broken in, things like this. And if the imam was, let's say, doing a Jummah, even if he was doing it from home and he's got two people at home praying, could you be praying behind him with that radio transmitter or by following the TV? Could you be doing this? Now, the majority of the people have, even though they have said no, there have been some scholars who have been, great scholars like Sidi Abu Layth al-Hafid, the great Hafid of Hadith, Ahmad al-Ghumari, who wrote a whole book called Al-Iqna' بصحة الصلاة بصحة صلاة الجمعة خلف المذياع. That the validity, Al-Iqna' was the name of his book, regarding the validity of prayer over the radio. Now, he argues in his book, and his book is available online. If you type in Iqna', you can download it. He speaks about how it's valid because there's nothing in the Quran or Sunnah that demonstrates the salah would be invalid. He quotes fatwa, and because in the past, the scholars, there were people who, for example, let's say there was a question if a person prayed on the minaret following the jama'ah, would his prayer be valid? Now, many people said that it would be valid. There were traditionally many fatwa about if, let's say, the rows are all complete and now you're praying, but there's a river in between. So you're praying on that side of the river, following the people on this side of the river. Most ulama, like Ibn Abdul Bar, all these great different madhabs will say usually that prayer is fine, even though you're not technically connected to them. But they say, well, you can see them, so it's fine. Just as in the masjids nowadays, you pray in all the different rooms. Now, the different rooms, you can't actually see the imam. But they say it's fine because you're following the speakers. And and you're kind of joined by space, even though it's a separate room, but the building, you're joined by the building and so on. Now, similarly, he's argued for what is you're joined by kind of virtual space. Now, this fatwa I would say that if you wanted to, you don't have to pray like this, you could just pray Dhuhr. But if you wanted to, I would say it would be valid in these kind of circumstances, you could do that. And it's not the first time that the scholars have recognized virtual space. Okay, so you had to be in the same majlis. So I had to be within this context and buying and selling for this transaction to be valid. The scholars then said, as the kind of means, but they will say the transaction is fine because you share a virtual space. So based on that, I would say that if a person in this day and age was, especially during these rules, during the pandemic, if they wanted, if Jum'ah was so important for them that they felt, I have to pray Jum'ah, in that case, they could do it khalf al-midya, by following the radio transmitter or the TV. If the person had recorded it and put it live and they followed that, it is permissible. So that's what I would highlight. Okay, moving on to let's take a look at zakat. There are people who have already written, like people like Sheikh Dr. Ali Al-Qarahdaghi and other people who've written already, stating that many Muslims delay their zakat up until Ramadan. And I'm going to come to Ramadan in a moment. So it is better in this time, in this quarantine, to bring your zakat, to kind of not postpone, but to kind of bring it earlier, to pay your zakat now, especially since people around the world are suffering due to this quarantine and lockdown. And that does make an immense amount of sense. So that's, if you are somebody that does pay zakat annually and you pay it during Ramadan, then maybe paying it earlier, even though we're very close to Ramadan now, may be a very sensible thing to do. I would advocate that as well. Right, other than that, for zakat, what if your zakat is due, but you're just about borderline and you're fearful for your family and your own income? If you're just borderline and you don't have enough kind of savings, or you just about kind of make that benchmark and you're worried, I would say, if you're worried, could you delay it? And, because you want to make sure these months go by fine before you give in charity and things, I would say that's permissible as well. In the sense that, charity does begin at home. So you should kind of prioritize yourself and your family. I would say that, but hand in hand with that, I would also put that, look, do have an element of tawakkul, that Allah will provide for you. Okay, and you'll see that He will. I know that sounds sometimes so bizarre, but throughout my life, I especially, for a considerable portion of my life, maybe at least a decade, I've really kind of had this understanding that, look, Allah will provide for me. And I've noticed, and I know it's impossible to explain, but I've noticed with that has come exponential growth in my kind of rizq. And I've kind of given, and the more I've given, especially to kind of family members, people, my parents, people like that, the more I do that, and the more this, and I call it an art of giving. Like, you have to really kind of let go of this kind of this almost innate miserliness. You have to let go of that. And I found that whenever I personally do that, sometimes, like, I might give and I might kind of be thinking, what if I'm kind of I'm a bit low, and I find that I get exponential kind of amounts in return coming from places which I didn't anticipate. So I would say that, look, yes, you can delay if you are worried, but at the same time, do have this kind of element of tawakkul. It is incredibly powerful. I would encourage that. Moving on to Ramadan, people. Ramadan. Now, this is an important one. It has stirred an immense amount of controversy throughout the Muslim world right now, especially some of the Arab countries, Egypt, some of the Middle East, and some of North Africa. There's been immense debate on the TV channels. What do we do about Ramadan in the pandemic? Now, I'm going to highlight several options, okay? And I believe all of these options are permissible. I believe that if you feel that Ramadan is absolutely fine for you and you are going to fast it, you're absolutely sound, you've got the conviction, you want to do it, then do it. It is absolutely fine for you to proceed with Ramadan. Okay? That's position number one. Position number two. Right, so sorry, as a caveat from position number one, just to clarify, that's for people who are normal. If you're ill and the doctor has advised you do not fast, then do not fast. Okay, by position number one, I meant normal people. I suppose, like I'm sitting here, many of you are sitting there, you're not actually ill. You're just in lockdown. If you feel that you can do it and you want to do it and you've got the conviction, then do it. And you want to do it full, then do it. It's up to you. It's your call. But the caveat is if you are ill, then no. Follow the doctor's advice. If the doctor says no, then no. Don't do it. Make up for it. Okay? Do not, as the Quran says, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not destroy yourselves over some kind of piety. Allah is not in need of your piety. Okay? So, and there is a hadith that إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ أَن تُؤْتَى رُخَصُهُ. Allah wants His rukhas to be taken, His kind of dispensations. Second layer, if you are you feel capable of fasting, but you're not too sure, you can take the option, and I've highlighted this previously from last year, you can take the option of timed fasting, because we live, especially in the West, especially in the UK, in a huge part of Europe and presumably North America, maybe some parts of it, our time zones, the kind of length of days is extraordinary. It's not like how it is close to the equator with most Muslim lands, where there's a balanced day and night. Our days, our days are incredibly disproportionate to the nights. So the days become incredibly lengthy. So I've highlighted that based on this, there are several fatwa that you can just take a set time, like anything from 12 hours to 13 hours if you like, anything like that, and you can just fast those fixed times. So you can fast from, let's say, 5 a.m. till 6 p.m., 5 a.m. to even 5 p.m., or 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., or 6 till 7, like between 12, maybe 13. If you want to do more, it's up to you, but I would say that would be the minimum. That you're taking a day and splitting it in half, which gives you 12 hours, and anything over that to be a bit on the safe side. If you did 12 and a half to 13, that would be the bare minimum. So you can just fast in a timed manner. So this is option number 2. Okay, so you can do that. You could just have timed fasts, and that would make things maybe easier for you. But once again, if you're under medical instructions not to be fasting, then do not fast. Okay? Option number 3. This is that you, even though you're not ill, but you're fearful that, look, it's strange circumstances. We are being told to keep our immune system healthy because, there's a pandemic, a global pandemic. And even though I'm not ill, but I could fall ill, and I don't want to compromise the situation. Therefore, I'm going to make sure I'm healthy. I'm going to make sure I'm eating. You can delay Ramadan till later on in the year. You can delay it till winter. There's no problem. I feel that you can take that ruling. There have been certain people who've said that. People, Sa'aduddin al-Hilali, some other people from Egypt. There's been a few other scholars that have given that fatwa. I would say that is an absolutely permissible fatwa to take. If you are feeling that, and it's your call. It's nobody else's call to make. So it's your call. If you feel that, look, you know what? I don't want to risk it. I want to make sure my immune system is up to scratch. I want to make sure I'm drinking a lot of water throughout the day. I want to make sure I'm having my vitamins. I want to make sure I'm eating. Right now there's a global pandemic. I don't want to catch something. I don't want to give it to my parents, make them, compromise their health. I don't want to do this. You have the God-given right to say, well, fine, I'll fast later on in the year. I'll fast in December. It is up to you. And Imam Shatibi explains that every person is faqihun nafs. You are your own judge. Okay? Nobody else can make that call for you. Okay? So, just to be clear on these rulings, and all of this, like I'm saying, this is for the kind of regular folk. Those who are ill, really, I think, as far as I'm assuming, that fasting for them is not good. They should leave it altogether. They should follow the medical advice, and they can make up for it later on. If they feel that they can't make up for it, they can just give fidya. Okay, and that is sufficient if they are ill. So those who are struck down with coronavirus or they're suffering, they can miss it and they can simply give fidya, or they can make it up later on. They have that choice, right? Just as pregnant women or women who are nursing their children, right, breastfeeding their children, these women, I feel, according to the fatwa of Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, that they do not need to make up their Ramadan. They can just give a fidya for it, and that's sufficient. And hence the verse of the Quran, if you take the verse of the Quran as it's actually revealed and read, it states, وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ, and upon those who can actually fast, like they have the capacity, the strength, they are capable of it. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ وَطَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. That fidyatun ta'amu miskin, that they give a fidya, meaning that they did not fast, but they were capable, they give a fidya. It does not mention that they make up for it. And this is why Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, they said that this was maybe for the pregnant women, because they were capable physically, but because they're pregnant, they want to make sure they're eating enough for the fetus. So because of this, they don't have to make up for it. Other ulama said they have to make it up later on. But so I would say in line with that. So these rulings, one, if you want to and you're capable and you're not ill, then do it. You want to do 18 hours fast, do 18 hours fast. It's entirely up to you. 2, if you're thinking, well, I want to fast, but I ain't going to fast for 18, 19 hours, that would really just weaken me out, then in that case, you can just do a timed fast. It doesn't matter about when it's sunrise, or you can set it accordingly. You can say every day I'll start my fast with, so for example, you could start it with sunrise. You could say, you know what, this time sunrise, or you could start it with a set time. So you could say, I'm going to start it at 5 a.m., start it at 4:30 a.m., I'm going to start it whenever, and I'm going to fast for 12 and a half hours or 13 hours, and that's fine. Or option number 3, you can delay Ramadan altogether and fast it later on. All of these options are valid. And if you are actually ill, then I think personally you should not fast. You must follow the medical advice. And you have an option of either making it up later on, or you can give the fidya now and not have to make it up. Fidya would be the meal of an average meal per day. So like, let's say, I don't know, £4. With £4 in the UK, you could get a kind of meal for somebody. So that would suffice. So you'd pay that for each day, for example. That's if you're not making it up. So that's all to do with that. Regarding the Tarawih prayer, if you want to pray Tarawih, that's excellent. You can pray it on your own. According to the Maliki Madhab, that is the Sunnah anyway. You're meant to pray it on your own. But and Imam Malik never used to go to the masjid to pray Tarawih. He used to pray it on his own. But if you want to follow your local masjid or the TV, you can. I've given that fatwa before. Or if you're not feeling up to it, I feel that you do not need to pray Tarawih. This is only a voluntary prayer. It's not an obligatory prayer. Okay, so you can miss that. That brings us on to Hajj, which is the final of the ibadat, Hajj for this year can be cancelled. We're cancelling Hajj, people. There's nothing strange about that. Okay. Many people have mentioned, I know a lot of people have written today that look, this can be cancelled, Qarahdaghi, and many other ulama of Al-Azhar and other people have written as well. But in the past, you'll see people like At-Tartushi wrote it was haram to do Hajj because the path was dangerous to go there. So because of danger, they declared it haram. And this is what, even though Ibn al-Arabi, his student, says this is so ironic because he declares it haram to do Hajj, but yet he travelled all the way from Spain to the Middle East. But he didn't go to Hajj. Tartushi. Right, so Tartushi was a don though. So Tartushi, right, he's from Ibn al-Arabi's teachers. And he kind of meets up with him. They link up in the Middle East around Palestine and those places. So people like that, Ibn Rushd, even in his time, over 100 years late, it was still Hajj was haram. In fact, he writes about how it was pointless him even putting the book of Hajj in his book, but he thought, well, and he was going to remove it until somebody said, nah, just put it in there for the sake of tradition. Otherwise, for a few hundred years, nobody had done Hajj from that entire region of the world. And I've given examples before when the Karamita, whether you want to in English call them the Karamites or the Karmatians, the Karamita for about 22 years almost, when they kind of wreaked havoc over the Hijaz, Hajj was cancelled. Because if you went there, they would just kill you. They believed Hajj was a pagan ritual. Like I mentioned, they stole the black stone. Ayo Abu Tahir al-Jannabi. Abu Tahir, I tell you. When he stole the black stone, you know what he said? He said, where's the Ababil? Because they tried to, I think they stole the door as well of the Kaaba, and the Kaaba has a kind of drain, right? The mizab. It has this kind of like golden drain for water to kind of like on the roof, coming off from the roof. So they were trying to break that off, but I think one guy fell off and died. So he said, you know what? Okay, leave that. So I think they took the door, but they definitely took the black stone. But he said, I don't see any Ababil coming to attack me. Your humor is on point though, you gotta say. Otherwise, he was a ruthless, vicious dog, but his humor was on point. I gotta give him that. He was like, He was like, does anybody else see them? I don't see them. He actually said this. I'm not making this up. He said, I don't see any Ababil coming to attack us. Because he claimed that this whole thing was, he claimed the whole Kaaba thing was pagan. And what he did is he blocked up the Zamzam. He just chucked loads of dead bodies in there. They blocked it all up. And that's what he was saying. He was saying that, like, where's the punishment? He was like, I don't see any punishment. I don't see God. He was like, I don't see God intervening. Ayo Abu Tahir al-Jannabi. And then he nicked the black stone. He took it. He was like, the black stone. He's like, I'll take this with me. And he held it ransom. Eventually, I think he got paid 50,000 dinars or something for it. And he still didn't give it. Ayo Jannabi. So anyway, that was the Karamita. But during their time, Hajj was cancelled for like 2 decades. But yeah, so I would say cancelling Hajj is absolutely fine. It's not the end of the world. Relax. Hajj has been cancelled on many occasions historically. So it's absolutely fine. Some people are freaking out. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. Relax. Calm down, mate. It's not the end of the world. Okay. Right, so I think as Jannabi said when he was destroying the Kaaba, that I don't really see it being the end of the world. So if it wasn't the end of the world then, it's not going to be the end of the world now. Right, so that's the fatwa surrounding all of this. I know the Ramadan one was really pressing people. Regarding other issues that may, like, so for example, getting married, Nikah, during this. Nikah, if a person was to do a Nikah during the lockdown pandemic, I mean, you can do a Nikah in person. They can use video calls to conclude a Nikah. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, that's probably concludes this entire section on the fiqh, on lockdown fiqh. I hope that's been of some help.